see if I can pick it up live here too. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the U.S. or around the world. Thanks for joining us on Baseball Outside the Box, the show that loves to interview baseball's best coaching minds who love the challenge of status quo. I'm your host, Pete Caliendo. And listen, we got another great show for you. I know I say that all the time, but we do. Before we start, do me a favor, please. Go to YouTube at Peter Caliendo, subscribe there. And remember, the audio is on baseballoutsidethebox.com. Check it out there. We got a lot of show. We got a lot more shows on Baseball Outside the Box, obviously, because we've been around longer. So go there, subscribe. Don't forget, I'm dedicating, obviously, all my shows in the next 2-3 weeks to my mom, who passed away November 5th, came from Italy. And if it wasn't for her and my dad, I would not be doing the things I've done in the last 37 years in baseball. God bless them. Rest in peace, Mom and Dad. And hopefully one day we will see you. Also, don't forget the convention, the Mohegan Sun World Baseball Coaching Convention coming up January 11th and 12th, 17th and 18th. 30 plus speakers, incredible. We've got some international speakers for you there too. So check it out at baseballcoaches.com, baseballcoachesclinic.com. Check it out, register there. Fantastic. It's one of the best clinics in the world. It's going to be virtual this year. So, and let me introduce our guest, former major league player. Yes, even with the Chicago Cubs where I'm at, and first base coach with the Pittsburgh Pirates, but he's got a tremendous background because he's got background as a minor league coordinator with the Padres, with the Dodgers. He was the outfield base running coordinator. So he's been around the game a long time. We had an interesting conversation prior to this talk, and you're going to hear about this because it's all about baseball development at the youth level. Also, if you're on Facebook, don't forget, go ahead. And if you have any questions, ask any questions you'd like. And let me introduce to you Tarrik Brock from the Pittsburgh Pirates. Tarek, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Good morning to you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. And first and foremost, just again, want to extend my condolences on the passing of your mom again.
Thank you very much, Tarek. And listen, this is the first time, folks, I have met Tarek. I see him on Facebook all the time. I follow him. But let me tell you, as soon as I met him, within 30 seconds of the show, I love this guy right away. He's positive. He smiles. He has a good time right away. I mean, he's just you could tell right away, he has that energy behind himself. I'm sure when he walks into a room, everybody listens. Tarek, tell me, let's do this. Let's just start off with, what have you been doing during this? I mean, especially 10 months of the virus. I know you've probably been following obviously all the baseball and everything that's been going on, but what have you been doing personally yourself and maybe with your coaches and players to kind of get better all the time?
Well, I mean, this year was a unique challenge where, it was a pause in spring training. And personally, I just thought, okay, I'll be home for 2 weeks, and we'll go back out. And you start to find out that this was really serious. So for a time, you were staying engaged via text messages. There were Zoom calls where you would just get on and just talk. And hey, is everybody doing fine? Is your safe, family members? And then you started to gain steam and momentum. Was like, okay, we're going to start. So then it was like, okay, what is spring training? The deuce is what we called it. What would that look like? And so you start to map it out and think like, are we going back to Florida? Are we going to Pittsburgh? And then you find out where you're planning for Florida, where you got more fields, to no, we're doing it in our home city where it's just one field. And our bench coach, Don Kelly, and Derek Shelton, our manager, did a great job of putting the schedule together. And we were able to just to make it work. And so it was Zoom calls, Zoom meetings, text messages, anything that we could to just keep getting touches on our players. And since the season has been over, it's been the same thing, not Zoom meetings, but just group texts that I sent out to our players. How are you doing? Just sending little funny things out, just staying connected and engaged, because this year has been unprecedented like no other. So that's what I've been doing.
Well, it is, that is one of the toughest things during this time. It's the isolation. It's, if you don't hear from people, if you don't talk to people, if you don't see them on Zoom, then you're kind of getting isolated into yourself and you wonder, well, where are my friends at? And I know everybody's busy, but it's kind of nice to be able to communicate and get that. Great job this season with how they handled the bubble and everything else that they did. I followed the season. I thought it went fantastic. I know we had a few issues at the beginning, but that was going to happen. I mean, this is an unknown virus. Also, the Pirates, with they've had Clint Hurdle for a long time, another great manager, great individual, super person. Now you bring in Derek Shelton, another guy in that same mold. The Pirates have always done a great job. What was the season like for you? What was the difference in the season when it comes to the games on the field that you felt? I know it was the no fans, but maybe some audio and all that stuff going on.
Mm-hmm. You know, that was one thing when we first started playing in the practice games and what it was like. And, once the pitcher gets the ball in his hand and there's a batter in the box, it's the game. And the cool thing about this is that everyone that was on that field spent some time on the backfield in spring training where there's no fans and it's just a B game. It's early morning and you're just out there playing, and the game is still the game. Um, and the other adjustment was that, you couldn't have the group meetings, all the time. So that was different. So like you had to meet with guys one-on-one, make sure you socially distance and things like that. But for us, it gave us a chance to see our players up close and personal for us. For me, I was, in the Dodgers organization the year prior, so I didn't know the guys. And in spring training, you're getting to know them, but you start to really get to know them during the season when all the numbers that they accumulate goes on the back of their cards. And so what we found was that we just learned a lot, not only about the players, but about ourselves as a coaching staff individually and us as a group. And what it did for us is it galvanized us. Like we had to lean on each other, for blind spots. For me personally, I leaned on Don Kelly, who was, a first base coach in the World Series. And I was like, what was that like? What was that atmosphere like? Because I've never been in the World Series as a first base coach. And so you just leaning on everyone. Joey Core at third base, like I leaned on him, and just asked questions. And that was just the cool thing, is that it brought us closer together and to experience. And we got really close. And so when the season was over, you wanted to get back. And I had to come back to California because where my family was at. But you realize after a week, like, I really miss these guys. You ate with them, you traveled with them, you did a lot. And it for me, it helped with the communication, where it was constant communication because things were coming up. And you did feel safe, after you took your screening to get into the stadium. You felt safe while you were in there, and you were just able to go out and do your job. On the field, we had some disappointing moments with some injuries and things like that to, our starting pitcher, pitching in our bullpen. But, life keeps moving on and the game keeps going. We didn't feel sorry for ourselves. We just continued to go out and just play and battle. And at one point in time, we scored more runs in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning than any other team in baseball. Should have showed us what we had. We just had young guys that just had to learn how to persevere and finish that game.
And the Pirates, for years, they've been always, extremely competitive team, well developed, well coached, not a high payroll. And they've always been able to compete. When they come to Chicago, man, they're always giving Chicago a tough time. And, but, what's interesting about all this is here you are coaching first base and there's no fans. What's the difference between the noise is an issue if you're obviously in another stadium when you're coaching first base, because you do have some communication that you have to have with the player at first. And I'm sure, Tarek, just like independent ball, because at independent ball, we had AAA guys, big league guys. They're all human beings.
Yes.
They miss signs. They're not sure of a sign sometimes. How do you communicate that as a first base coach? Give us an idea of what was going on during the season with communication at first base.
This year, it was, even though there was piped in crowd noise, like you could still hear a lot of stuff, things that you would normally hear, like you would hear it. And it was like, oh my gosh. And so it's just like a lot of communication beforehand, just use when a guy got a hit, for instance, and he runs through the bag, hey, stop right here. Give me all your armor, your arm guard, your shin guard right now, and let me download you with some information really quick. Because when we get to first base in our division, you got Rizzo, you got Votto, you got some guys, Carpenter from St. Louis. You got guys that they've been around the block. Yeah. And, they've heard every code word, everything that was out there. And so for us, it was like, no, we need to get this download right now before we get to first base. And interesting, like, the players can hear you more than they ever could before. So one time, it was a ball that was hit. I was talking to the batter runner, and the trail runner or the lead runner, the runner was at first, thought I was talking to him.
Ah,
And so it was a good filling out process. And I think this year, more than anything, will prepare me as a base running coach when we get to spring training in case the season starts out the way it ended. Now we know how to tackle it. And even if it don't, there's still some things that we could pull from this year that we can use moving forward as well.
Boy, that's detrimental at third base. You said Joey Cora. I mean, you have two runners coming in, and all of a sudden the second runner hears something, and it's not for him. I can see that, boy, it causing issues. What happens when a uh, are there signs that you have, or do you just pull them to the side and whisper in them? If I turn around to you and say, Tarek, I missed that. I'm not sure what the sign was, but I want to make sure the sign. Does that happen? And how do you deal with that?
Well, mostly at the time, I'm right there with them. So, it was the point, and the cool thing was about having the mask on was that people can see your mouth move or anything.
Right.
Like that was a huge advantage where you could talk and be like, hey, you're running, or a little tap or whatever it may be, but just to let them know that like you're running on that. And the biggest thing that I would say that Joey Core did great is he made the signs easy for everyone to get. And we press it upon our guys like, hey, you have to get the signs. And the Major League ball players will get it. And yes, they have moments where, they might not be sure and they're second guessing. It could be a raise of an eyebrow. It could be anything at that moment where you go like, yes, go. And you just use it to your advantage. But that normally gets worked out really quick. And then it free flows where, as the first base coach, everyone's different. And so the communication is different as well. That was like the biggest thing.
Baseball's a game of habits. We all know that. We got good habits, bad habits. We try to break some bad habits, just like life, right?
Yeah.
And this is just a funny note. It's interesting because you'll see a pitching coach go out and talk to the pitcher, and they got the mask, but yet they're still covering their mouth because they don't want to see anybody, anybody that reads lips, but they got the mask on. But that's just a habit, So I just thought that was interesting. But from a skill standpoint, now you're at first base. I want to help some of our coaches because I think it's underestimated coaching first base. I think at all levels. I think it's important to have a good person there at all levels. An example, a runner's running through the base. The infielder's got a tough play. He may make an overthrow. What's your recommendation? Because, verbally, sometimes when I played, I couldn't hear the first base coach. So there's got to be other ways to communicate to the runners. What do you use personally to communicate to the runners in that situation?
Well, for me, as the runners running down the line, I tried to get as close to the line as possible. And so beforehand, I had a conversation with the first base umpire. Hey, when he comes down here, I'm gonna back up so I can stay in front of him. Is it okay if I work in this position here? And there was times where they would slide me out the way, but like you have that communication right away because it's easier for them to see me when I'm in front of them and hear me. But if they get past you, like they're left to their own devices, their own thoughts right there. And so when they're hitting the back, I'm talking to them, right away, come through it, hit the front base, break down. First baseman has the ball, or it's an overthrow, stay here. And as soon as they're stopped, the first thing I tell them is turn towards me, because I'm in foul territory. So now you turn, I can get, their equipment, and then we can start talking. If there's an overthrow, and when you back up down the line, that second baseman at some point in time is going to come. So you can kind of feel that second baseman because normally if there was an overthrow, it's an automatic advance towards advancing the second base. But certain ballparks, you can't. It's St. Louis, it's angle. So it'll hit the brick wall and come back on, and now you're running into an out right there. So you have to do your homework before. How much foul ground do I have? Does it hit hard off the fencing or the railing? What's the ground rules? If it hits the net above the wall, is it dead or is it live? So those are things that, you can talk to the umpires about, or, when your manager does the lineup card exchange and find out what the ground rules are so you could be able to help your players. If there's a ball that's hit that gets through the infield, and my job is to let them know if he has the ball or not when they're making their turns. He has the ball, or if this is for sure that you can't advance, hey, stay. just single words that they can understand, not too many words. I don't use go or anything like that because sometimes go can be interpreted as no,
Yeah.
and things like that. You just want to be for sure two, 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 or hard turn, just things like that. And that comes when you're working the base running and spring training. You want to use the same language. The consistency is the most important thing, so that they're hearing that. And the biggest thing is, like you said it before in the intro, and I think it was great, was energy. I talk about it all the time. We're going to run with energy, run for each other. Our goal, even though we might not accomplish it this year, is to be the best base running organization in baseball, period. And that's the goal. That's the standard that we're going to work towards, in 2021. And so when you set those out and you run with energy, yes, you might make some mistakes, but again, we don't want to fall for it. We want to fail for it. So there's a difference. I want to fail forward instead of falling, forward, and just keep going from there. Because it's like, I look at it as, what's the opportunity? And so I like opportunities because it's like challenges. We all rise up to challenges, but we succumb to weaknesses. And so, what's the challenge? We need to get better at turns at first. Well, let's work on it. Let's work on hitting the front inside corner of the bag, dirt and bag, getting the backside of the bag with the toe in the dirt, the ball of foot hitting the base and going towards the next base. And so that's the things that we'll continue to work on, and the verbiage that I use, because base running is the heartbeat of the team, and it defines who you are as well. Like, you can see when guys give up, it's like, no, don't give up. That he still has to secure that out. Once that out is secured, there's nothing you can do. You can, throttle it down from there. But, until that out is secured, like, we're going to make them earn it.
Love it, love it. And I love the part that you added the base running there, because base running and coaching first base obviously go hand in hand. Excuse me. What I'd like to know is, because it all starts at the younger levels, and if you do it well at the younger levels, then it's much easier as you get older, because you've got pretty good habits, and you've created good habits there. What do the Pirates and yourself teach? Because it's debatable a lot of times at the young levels. What do you teach when the ball's hit? What the runner should be doing? Because I'm watching too many coaches tell players what to do, and players don't seem to have their own instincts at the
Mm-hmm.
younger levels. And I think
Mm-hmm.
instincts need to be developed. So talk about that. What do you teach when the ball's hit? And instinctively, do we want kids to play a little bit the game on their own, to make mistakes so they learn from that?
Right. And so this is where I believe practice becomes the best teaching tool forever. Like, practice is where you get better. The game is where you learn how to compete. Right. So in practice, you want to put players in situations where they have to think, where they have to trust what they see, know their job responsibilities as a trail runner, and it's 2 outs, and you have a runner at second base, and it's a hard hit ball. And, the third base coach is determined he's going to send the lead runner regardless. So now you're going first to third. If that ball just so happens to go to third base, you're going to stop so that the lead runner can score, because, like, that's the most important run, is the lead run. So, like, those are the things that you try to instill with them, and give them briefly, and encourage them on that. We talk about everything is measured and calculated. We measure out our leads. We calculate when we start our secondary leads, and we want to carry that energy and let the ball stop us, and use our right foot to get back to the base. Like, these are the things that we do. We're always looking for the extra 90s. And like our manager says, like, we want to win the bang bang plays, right? Like, we want to win those games. And so it's like, I look at it like this: there's things that we can do. If we run down the lines, with great energy, right? We go first to third, and we score from second at a higher rate than anyone else. And also we advance extra 90s, whether it's tagging up or balls in the dirt and others, then we'll be the best team on the field that night. Now, here comes the hard thing. Can you do it again tomorrow? You know, and the thing is this, it's like, we want to be the team that makes the least amount of outs on the bases. And when you're being aggressive, you're going to make outs. Excuse me, but what's the opportunity that you gain from that? Like, what did you learn from that? What's the opportunity moving forward? And if you look at it like that, it's like, yes, those mistakes hurt at the major league level. Yes, they do. But then it also will set you up for down the line as well. So when that situation comes back around, you take into account, what is his arm like? What's the distance that guy had to travel, the fielder had to travel? What is his arm like? What is my speed? It's like when you know yourself, you know your abilities, you're able to make better and quicker decisions.
Yeah, and today's metrics, boy, you guys have all the metrics. I mean, you look at MLB Network, they can tell you, how many steps the outfielder took to catch a ball, how hard he threw the ball. There's a lot of metrics that you're able to use to determine all that. What about a runner when he hits the ball? What's your recommendation there? Because you need to know where the ball is in order to know what to do. But a lot of people say, well, if you look at the ball, that slows you down. What's your teaching there?
Well, I tell guys, and this is a part of at the beginning of spring training, and I try to keep it light because, people don't wake up in the morning like, hey, I would like to run the bases today.
Yeah.
Like, I would like to spend a lot of energy. Guys don't want to do that, right?
No.
So I try to do it like this. I talk about the 5 looks, right? And, the first look is the ball, right? And so when you put a ball in play, guys were like, well, I don't look, I don't know. But if you hit a ball and the third baseman lays out for it and it hits off his glove and it trickles to the outfield and you run the first thing a player does is he looks up at the scoreboard. And if they flash his E, he goes, oh my God. So like, if you say you don't look at the ball, you just lie right here. So it's 1. So I talk about 5 looks. The first one is the ball. Like, you have to see it in order to hit it, even though there's data that says like the last, few feet that you don't see the ball. I get that. So it's the ball. And then after the ball is put in place, like, you're looking at what direction I'm going to first base. So I'm looking at the base. So the first look is the ball. Second look is the base. The third look is the first baseman. He's going to give you a lot of feedback in that moment. If he goes to the bag to set up to get ready to receive a throw, then the ball is still on the dirt. I still got to hustle down the first. If he goes towards the base and then peels off, that means that ball is off the dirt, which means that first base coach, I'll be moving towards you, which means that ball is off the dirt. Now you're rounding the base and you're listening. Wow. 2, 2, 2, stay. So that's it. So then you got the ball, the base, the first baseman. Now, if it's on the dirt, you're going to hit the front part of the bag, not with the ball of your foot. We think small, we aim small with your toe. And if you go with your toe, then you hit it with the ball of your foot. If you go with the ball of your foot, you hit it with everything, right? I'm just putting my hand on the screen, but it's okay. I talk with my hand.
That's all right. That's all right.
Right. So you're going to hit the front part of the base with your toe. After you do that, you're going to break down looking over your right shoulder for the overthrow, but you're also going to look over your left shoulder in case there's other runners on the base. It could have been a guy that was going from first to second on that slow roller that you hit. So you want to know if there's something going on. Maybe he's in a rundown. Now I can advance. So I'm going to do all that staying in a straight line. And then from there, I'm going to turn towards the first base coach. So if there's a ball where now if that ball is hit and it's through, so the first look is a ball, second is the first baseman, third on that is the base, third is the first baseman. If he vacates the bag, now I'm looking to hit the front inside part of the bag with either foot. I don't want to chop my feet. Mm-hmm. Now, once I hit the base, there's 2 confirmations that I'll hit the base. One is a physical touch of me touching the base, and there's me seeing it with my eyes that I've touched the base. So there's no confusion. Like, did I touch it or not? No, I hit it. And so now I'm looking up because I know where the ball is hit. Now from there, the only thing that's going to stop me is a low throw coming in, and the second baseman or the shortstop is around the base. That throw is going to stop me, make me hit the brakes, plant my right foot, and I'm going back to first base with my eyes on the ball, just in case, it trickles off or it gets past them. And that is making them finish and complete a play. Now, when teams do that over and over and over and over again, at one point, if they ever decide to get casual, and there's a saying, I say this with our base running time, casual people become casualties, and now we get to capitalize on that mistake. And so for me, over my time of developing, I've been able to come up with some sayings that just becomes true. It's just casual people become casualties. You like pay taxes on greatness. Like they're going to pay taxes on this base running that we're going to come and do. It's like, those are the things when you say it over and over, there's a buy-in, and then that just becomes the standard. And when it becomes a standard, then everyone reinforces what the standard is, which is to be the best base running team, where we're going to do things that other teams just decide not to continue to do throughout the game.
Yeah, and I really love the part that you said. I love all of it, and I love the part that you said about the defense can tell you a lot. Sometimes we forget that. I've been in the game a long time, and I have not heard that. Where the defense can actually tell you what your situation is. Now, when we talk about all this, and we're going to get into some specifics, but when we talk about it, and you guys train for it in spring training, one of the most difficult things for a lot of young coaches to work on is that's great that we're working on it, but sometimes it doesn't transfer into the game. Are
Mhm.
there things that you could recommend that allow you to help you transfer it into a game? I know it's not going to work for every player, but because if we just train
Right.
for it, that's great. You got it down. But if it doesn't happen in a real situation, then you may not react the same way.
Mm. That's a great question. And what I found for me personally on my journey was that the one thing that I wanted the players to do was own the information, right? Once they own the information, it's easy to react because you know it, like you know it. Just like, hey, what's your name? Tarrik Brock. What's your name? Like, I could be half asleep and you ask me my name, I'm going to tell it to you. So I know it, so I own it. And so what I tell our players is, once you own the information, you could do two things with it. One, you could use it, and then two, you can give it away. And so once we do it, it's like I try to condense the base running, because you only have a short period of time with a lot of guys where you get to keep their attention. Because I know guys that don't run very well, they don't want to run because it's like, well, they'll give up. They're like, well, I don't matter. And I totally disagree. I break base runners down into tiers, tier 1, 2, and 3, right? Your first tier is just your guys that are burners, your base stealers. Their sole purpose is two things: good base stealers and good base runners. One, they either pull you even because you still into to catch up to tie the game, or you looking to extend it. So that's what good, like, that's your tier 1 guys, right? Just good base runners, good heads up guys. They know their abilities. And tier 2 is the guys that aren't quite everyday base stealers, but they're smart. They know how to run the bases well, cut corners, when to take risks, when not to take risks, you know. And so, excuse me, that's a good thing. Then you got tier 3. Those are the guys that they score the majority of your runs. And on our team, we had, Justin Stallings, Josh Bell, and Colin Moran. Like, those are your most important base runners, right? Because
Mm.
when they score runs, it is a plus, right? So with them, they can take bigger primary leads. They can take bigger secondary leads. And anytime a ball gets to the outfield, outfielders are licking their chops because those are the guys that they're trying to throw out. So those are where you score the bulk of your runs, right? So when you break them down in tiers, now you understand, like, the importance of who you are. Now it's better for you, or it's easier for you to make better decisions and understanding who you are and what you need to do, and trusting your first and third base coaches to help you maybe extend your primary lead at second base,
Mm.
right? Or like you can get a little bit more at first, or as the first base coach, this guy's got really quick feet. So, hey, today we're going to shorten up our primary lead by half a step because it's really quick and it comes early. And if he doesn't come early, then you're okay. And that comes with knowing those players. And that's the biggest thing. And in spring training, it's hard because you don't have those situations a lot where at the beginning, guys are playing 2 innings, 3 innings, and then they're out. So you got to wait pretty much to the end of spring training for them to see a starting pitcher 2 times or a
Mm.
third time, which is late, to work on certain things. And that what makes it tough for having, young players and coming over to a new organization.
Yeah, I could see that, Tarek. What about when we're taking leads? Everybody's an individual. Um, you don't see as much stealing this, nowadays in the major leagues for reasons of statistics, obviously. Um, but guys that do steal, most of the guys have their own techniques to get a good jump. And if as a coach you see they don't have a good technique, you start working on a change on that technique.
Yeah. So actually, what I do is I like to see what they know, what they like to do, what works best for them, and see, like, can we clean it up? Can we sharpen it up? Like, what can we do? And then I put my technical hat on, and then I go, okay, like, this is how we can clean it up. You know, your left foot on the crossover, or for me, I call it the first step explosion series, which is your first 4 steps. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that foot is spending a lot of time in the air. Can we get it and keep it lower to the ground so that we can get distance and direction that way? And it may take for a guy to add a tool to his repertoire to help him steal bases off of certain types of pitchers. You know, a pitcher can, you know, be quick, but if you know, take more of a walking lead and be able to get more of a running start, then you might be able to steal off of him. So it might be things that they need to add, you know, to their repertoire to be able to help them steal bases. So it is definitely a collaborative effort. You know, you want to try and see what works, what doesn't work. And once you go from there, you have maybe 2 things that you can use. And I'd rather use those 2 things all year long than just one thing, which only leaves me able to steal off a certain type of pitcher or just off of a certain time off of pitchers.
You know, you mentioned earlier, you know, about selling players or getting them comfortable in the system. You know, at the major league level, if you guys have a lot of statistics, you have a lot of video. So if a player, you know, isn't sold completely on, you know, that technique, he could obviously be convinced because you could show him the difference in the new technique and the old technique that he was using, the difference in their jump because of technology.
Definitely, you could use technology, but you can also use feel. Like, that's the greatest indicator right there for you. You know, and feedback. You know what? You know, I popped up. Okay, so you know what that feels like when you popped up. So when you pop up, that means all your explosive movements went up in the air. Your power went up in the air. Now you got to come down, re-engage with the ground, and go that way. Um, and so that's it. And then you can use that to you know, break down pitchers, but also use that on yourself as well. You know, see, like, am I really gaining distance or direction, or am I, if I'm just short, if I'm standing up, if I'm going nowhere fast, you know what I'm saying, with my first 3 steps, then, like, wow, you know. And I look at it as like, we need to get to certain marks on the field, which will give us an opportunity to be safe on the back end. So it's like, you know, after my 3rd or 4th step, I need to be in this range at this point on the field. And then my next 4 to 5 steps, I need to be here. And then my last, you know, 4 steps, I need to be here getting ready to slide. And if I'm in those, I take those chances. But understand, it's the major leagues. You know, you got catchers like Tucker Barnhart,
Oh
Yadier
yeah.
Molina. We went to Kansas City, Salvador Perez, guys that can turn it around in a hurry.
Yeah.
Uh, and so you can do everything right, get a great jump, great decision, run like the wind, and that ball can still beat you. And you got to be able to take and you know, tip your hat and don't get gun shy to come out and do it again. Most guys don't steal, or most managers don't like the guys to steal unless it's, you know, a certain percentage rate that you want to maintain, like success rate. You know,
Sure.
it's like, you know, the GPA of base running or base stealing, right? It's
Yeah.
like, you know, you want to, you know, stay around, you know, 80%, you know, 78, sometimes 75, like, but you want to have a good success rate, or else you're just running into outs and, you know, taking away opportunities from your offense.
Yeah, and I think fans also forget, you know, that there's so much technology that you could pretty much tell what the percentages are going to be for that person with that particular pitcher, the success rate on stealing, and that's why we've seen some reduction in that. You know, the other part of the game is that's important, and you mentioned it was the secondary because, you know, that's when the pitcher delivers the ball, what the
Mhm.
runner does. What are some mistakes that you're seeing in the secondary that players make that coaches can improve on?
The biggest thing is when to start the secondary league, right? And what I found in my teaching, and maybe it was just me, and you know, thank God that I've learned this, was that, you know, we assumed that players knew when to start their secondary league. And if you put 8 players together and you say, hey, say now, you know, to start your secondary league, and you go through a motion, you might get, like, you know, 8 different nows, right? And so it's like, man, you know, like, you might go, like, you lift up your left foot, and guess what? Like, a guy might be saying now there. Well, if I lift up my first foot, and when I lift up my foot and he goes now, at that point, as soon as I lift, he's gonna get out there and stop. So now the momentum that you were gaining on your secondary lead, you just lost. You just gave up. Now you got to get going again. And so it's like teaching it, as I like to look at, as the arm is coming forward, getting close to the head is when you start your secondary lead, because that will keep you moving. And the ball being received by the catcher will actually suspend your secondary lead. And now you got to plant that right foot and get back looking, at the catcher. So it's like you have to run the bases, what I call active feet. Like you're constantly moving, constantly in motion. Good base runners just have constant movement. They don't just stand still. They don't watch the play. They stay in the moment of the play. They're not ahead of the play, waiting for it to develop, and they're not behind trying to catch up. On both ends, you're prone to make a mistake. You can make a mistake being in the middle of it, but I take my chances of being in the middle of the play instead of on the front or the back end of it.
Something you said earlier, the game's changing. I'm going back 30 years, 40 years, because, when I played, it was pretty much, here's the technique, here's the way we do it, and you do it that way, even though I may not be comfortable with it. Nowadays, you said it, it's about asking the player how they feel, how they feel what they're doing. Does it feel good? How do they feel about it? But it's asking questions, I guess, is what I'm getting at, instead of always telling players what to do. So my question is this, we're teaching individuals, and that's what I love what you just said about the secondary, right? It's an individual, because if everybody starts the same, everybody ends up different. So when it comes to reading pitchers, that's the same thing, right? Because some guys may read the front shoulder, some guys may read something else. So is that a situation where you ask again how they do it and then determine what may be better or if it's good for them?
I think it should be a collaborative effort where the players do their homework and then the coach does his homework. So before every series, like I'm watching all the pitchers. And so what happens is as you go along, the strengths of certain base stealers. So say like on the team, you might only have, out of 13 or just say 12 position players, you might only have 4 guys that steal. And then you might have some guys that can get you a couple bases. So that's the difference. We have 4 base stealers and we got 3 guys that can get you a couple bags.
Yeah.
So the guys that can get you a couple bags, now them being able to steal might be based upon counts, might be based upon times in those counts. It might be based on certain pitchers and situations where if you're a base stealer, we're asking you to steal when everyone knows that you are running and they can't stop you. That is a base stealer to me. And so those guys got to be able to steal when a pitcher is, he's like low 1-3s, like, 1-3-0, 1-2-8, 1-2-5 with the Molina behind the plate, right? And so like you have to go in that situation and still be able to be safe, or make a competitive throw or just whatever it may be. So everything is individualized. And I look at base running like this, right? We all love music and we can feel the rhythm of the beat in the music. I might pick up on the high end, you might pick up on the low end, but it's still the same rhythm to the same song. We just have to approach it differently. And in that, now we got to choose how that best suits the situation in the team. And so if I got Josh Bell at the plate and it's a left-right matchup and he's been hitting the ball well, right? So at that point in time, a base stealer's biggest threat is that I might run and you don't know it. So now you got to pay dividends down here with this guy that's swinging the bat well. And I might wait till later on in the at bat. And just understanding those things. If they're throwing high fastballs, that's not a good time to run because it's an easy catch and throw for the catcher. So it's a great responsibility with becoming a base runner. It's just not, I'm the fastest guy on the field next to Jesus and I should be running. No, there's responsibility that comes with that as well.
And you mentioned certain pitches. I know in independent ball, we taught our runners, as they're giving signs, sometimes the runner takes a little bit of a lead or maybe off the bag a little bit, but you'll see guys' eyes move to the catcher and then they'll move back to the pitcher. They're trying to pick up the sign. And, that's all legal because it's on the field.
Yes.
That's good stuff because that's what you're talking about. If I know the pitch, I've got a better ability to get a good jump on this guy. So what, is there other things you might be able to do that helps base runners, base stealers?
Yeah, I mean, there's things that you can do, but here's the one thing about information. The same information that you have, they have. So it's like, man, I got an advantage. The advantage is this. When is the best time for me to run for our team?
Mm.
Not when's the best time for me to run.
Yeah.
So it might be best for you to run early for certain situations, and it might be best to run later. And while you're there, you're constantly staying sharp and you're staying in tune so that when the coach releases you or you're free to go, now you don't miss that moment. And sometimes with certain pitchers, the best time might be early. And if you miss that opportunity, now you just become a decoy for the rest of that at bat for that hitter because you missed your time. And so with that being said, that's where the cat and mouse game come in. That's where you get to, come and, it's like there's nothing more greater for a base stealer than the threat of you running and you're not even going.
Mm.
And so most base stealers like, I'm gonna get a shorter lead because they're not gonna think I'm going. No, you're fast. They're expecting you to run even with the short lead. They're saying, we're glad he's got a short lead. That gives us an advantage.
Yeah.
So it's not like they don't think I'm going. Yes, they always think you're going. If you're a base stealer, like you are a threat. As soon as you come out of the dugout with the helmet, spikes, and a bat in your hand, like you are a threat. Now, when you get on first, now you're about to get all the attention of a couple guys. And this is how I look at our base stealers. I said, when you're out there, you got the pitcher, you got the catcher, you got the manager, you got the bench coach, right? And you got one middle infielder that's going to receive a throw and put a tag down. You got 5 guys that's trying to stop you.
Yeah.
So you have to be as sure as you can possibly be when you decide to go in that direction towards second base. So doing your homework matters a lot. Your jump, your lead, your read, your decision-making becomes important because if not, you got all those guys on the other dugout that's just watching you, watching every movement, watching everything you do to hopefully give away that you're going to run on this specific pitch because they're expecting you to run, period.
And then you wonder why there's not as much base stealing in the big leagues. I mean, there's so much against you when it comes to that. And not to mention the guys can, like you said, can catch and throw and tag. And then you got guys like Javier Baez that don't even look when they tag somebody. They just tag them right away. The skill level is incredible at the major league level. The show I mentioned earlier, we love to challenge the status quo a little bit. And this might be a curveball, but it's a basic one. But I've always said, not always, because I did it myself, but at a certain point I stopped doing it. When we're coaching first base, I'll bounce back to first base for a second. Yelling back sounds good, but to me, it's really a crutch because a runner expects that. And by the time the brain really reacts and that lets the body know, from the voice, there's really a large delay. If you're not back by the time, you yell back, you're probably picked off. But at the high school level, youth levels, I think it's important because they get a lot of kids in the dugouts yelling back. To me, it's not about the runner. It's about teaching those kids the pitcher's move, paying attention to the pitcher, because, a lot of young kids don't do that. So to me, I guess it really, I'm not sure why we yell back. It sounds good. But where I'm getting at is one of the toughest jobs for first base coaches, I think, is when you have a runner on first and second. And now you have an extra hard job because you got major league hitters hitting and that ball comes at 110 miles an hour, sometimes more.
Yes.
But you've also got to watch the first baseman and you've also got to determine the runner where he's at and then watch home. Talk about that. How do you do that?
Wow, that's a really good
That's
question. And I will start with this. Normally during that time with the runner on second or runner at first and second, one coach will have the lead runner. And traditionally, it was normally the third base coach will move up to help out that runner and then try to move back in position to, read the ball off the bat. As the first base coach, I don't have to make any decision on sending a runner. So I look at it like this, and I've always said this. Excuse me. The first base coach is the most important coach because he gets to verbally talk to the runner at first, right? He gets more runners down there. So he's the most important coach. the most valuable coach is the third base coach, because when he sends a guy, it normally adds to our total, our run score total. Like we either score our first run or our second or our third. So with that being said, I want the most valuable guy to be able to just sit back and be able to just send the guy home or stop him. So the positioning of the first base coach becomes extremely important, because in that point, I can see the first baseman, I can see the whole field, and from there, my job is to help the lead runner out. So I would tell the runner at first, hey, when I first start talking, I am talking to the runner at second first and then to you.
Oh.
And so with that being said, I want you as the trail runner, the runner at first, to get a little deep so that you can see the lead runner as well, see the pitcher and the lead runner. So we're all on the same page from there. Yelling back is, I think it's just something I look at as insurance.
Yeah.
It's just insurance, back, everyone stays engaged. Even for younger players, and even sometimes at the major league level, there's some guys where you're sitting on the bench and you might see things before we see them, because I'm looking at something and they're focused. Like with a runner on second, my focus is solely on the runner at second, not the pitcher. So they might see something before we see it, because I'm looking at, Chicago, I'm looking at Javi Baez, and I'm watching him and the runner, and the guys can see the pitcher and see what the pitcher's doing right away. And so that becomes a situation, right there. But yes, it can be difficult. Like you said, that ball comes out really quick. You got, Gregory Polanco, and he can hit the ball pretty hard. Colin Moran and Adam Frazier as a left-hand hitters, and you have first base, and you're 93 feet away from it. It could be pretty intense down there.
What's your recommendation, first and second, as we're talking about? And you got guys like Molina, Contreras here in Chicago. These guys can throw from all kinds of positions, and you don't even know they're coming. What's your recommendation on that secondary when you have first and second for the runner on first? Is there any recommendations, mistakes maybe they make there, and that's why they get picked sometimes, back pick?
I think what happens is, if you're taking a pretty big, primary lead, then your secondary lead is going to be shorter. Because if you get to a certain distance, that is an alert button that goes off, or bell that goes off on those catchers. And especially if they have an open side, meaning it's a right-hand hitter up and they got a clear shot to throw down to first base. Whether it's a left-hand hitter, it could be different. So with that being said, I think most guys get too big of a lead. They stop, they don't really, work back aggressively, because they only looking for you to be casual over there so that you can become a casualty. Or if a ball takes them to their, their throwing hand side with their glove this way towards the base, now they might come up and throw back. And the cool thing about our division is, in playing, the AL Central and the NL Central, it's a lot of good catchers.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then what happens is everyone was back picking. So that was always constantly on your mind. So I think that made us better, because we were aware of that all the time. And hey, be careful, it's a great time. Or you know what, you're stopping out here. Hey, pay attention. This is a great time for a back pick right here. And you're just constantly talking to your guys. And sometimes major league players just make great plays as well.
Yes.
But sometimes you want them to make that just outstanding, that great of a play to get you out. That means it's really big and it's going to be seen a lot on TV that night. But it's just a part of the game.
It's interesting about the game, and it's not something we're really going to talk about this part, but as far as we have instant replay, and what I think one thing instant replay's done to help the game, that is now you see guys following the tag, finishing the tag, staying with the runners. I mean, I remember in the old days, we used to try to teach that, but never created a real good habit of it. They used to put a quick tag and get out of there. Now you stay with the tag. What about second and third? What's the coaching situation there? Who has who normally in your system? The first base coach, the third base coach have both runners, or how does that work?
Well, let's just go second and third. The cool thing about having Joey Corey, who's done it for a long time and at a high level, was that, I wanted to be a help. I just didn't want to be a first base coach that just stood over there with the flashy stopwatch and just gave times and, held on to gloves. Like, I really wanted to be a part of the game. And so we used each other. We used Joey in certain situations to help out and assist runners at first base. And there was times where with a runner at third, I would help guys as far as extending on their primary lead, where Joey was the audible voice, of it. And then I was the visual. Hey, you can get one step more here. You can get one step. And even at second base as well, be able to help guys out. The third base coach, I just want him to be in a position to just be able to score runs for us. I want to make his job easy because he's got the hardest job as it is. Like, should I send this guy? Should I not? And just was doing it that way. So it was a collaborative effort. Sometimes we're Joy, like, I got him. Okay, cool. Like, you go from there. But most of the times I tried to handle all the runners and work. And there were some times where Joey saw something like, hey, he needs to get a little bit more. Okay, great. Blind spot for me. I can't see it. Hey, let's get a little bit more. I think both coaches have to work together. And the goal is just to score more runs. And we can use, both our voices and nonverbal communication to help those guys get in the best position to score runs for us.
Tarek, we got about 10 more minutes. This has been fantastic. I love talking about first base and also base running, first base coaching. Are there communication signs between you and Joey or third base coach? Are there certain signs you guys use to communicate so you don't give away something?
Yes, obviously, and the cool thing about base coaches is, excuse me, in the dugout, like, you stand next to each other. So there's always constant dialogue. Hey, when I do this, this is what this means. When I give you a look or, when I'm in a certain position or a certain spot, this is what this means. Or I would come off the field like, hey, with Moran at second, were you thinking about sending him at all, during that time? No, I wasn't. Okay. So like certain things that we pick up on in dialogue to where after a while you get in such a good groove where, like, I know in a situation where there was times where I'm like, you're going to send him right here. And he would go, oh, no, not right now. And then he would point out like he moved in or, who's on deck or certain things like that. And it just becomes great to where after a while you get into a really good rhythm and you start to know. And then now you have the opportunity to change that up as well. So our goal is just to make sure that when you're at second base and any ball that touches grass, outfield grass, you looking to score unless Joy stops you. And that's it. The third base coach job is just to stop you, not to send you. And if he's having a hard time making a decision, then you make the decision for him and you keep going in those situations. And our guys were good at doing that, and having joy. And when you have an aggressive, third base coach, it makes it fun because it's like anytime that ball gets an outfield, like, we got a chance of scoring right here.
I'm curious because watching Major League Baseball, you see a lot of players nowadays, not a lot, but quite a few I've seen on television that kind of run the bases on their own. Javier Baez is a great example. He's got great instincts. He runs the game on his own. And a lot of times, and I may be wrong because I'm watching on television, but I replay it several times. And a lot of times it doesn't even look like he's paying attention to the third base coach. Are there times where guys are on their own? I mean, if I'm at second base and the ball's hit down the left field line, I really don't need the third base coach. I can make that decision or some situation like that. But how do you know which situation that certain players on their own? Is it like you said, if I give you the stop and that's all you need to worry about, other than that, just do whatever? How does that work?
Well, I mean, for the most part, yes. And like, there's certain spots where you can look based upon where the defense is positioned, right? So say if, they're playing pull in the outfield on the right-hand hitter, which everyone is shifted over, and the ball gets hit and it takes the right fielder, to his left, and you're at second base. Like, you're thinking, I'm scoring, and so like you're moving that situation where you don't need a guy. And when you have a situation where you're still in the base and the ball gets away from a guy where a coach might say, I don't think you can make it because he don't have the best view, but you're on the field, you're close to it, and your skill and your ability. And over time, when guys make good decisions constantly, then there's a trust level that is given to where you trust what they're doing in that, and to where you let them go in that situation and you let them run the bases. But there's times that the third base coach, like, you're still responsible. If that guy runs into an out, like, someone has to give an account of why that happened. So
yeah.
I look at it like this: I'd rather be accountable than rather having to give an account for something that happened. Because when you have to give an account, then there's questions that get asked. Yeah. Did you tell them how many outs there were? Did you let them know where the outfield was positioned? Did he take too big of a primary? Was this secondary not aggressive enough? Like when you give an account, there's a lot of things that you have to answer, where if you're accountable, you're saying, hey, you need to get a little bit more on your primary lead. Hey, your secondary lead is too aggressive. Be careful for the back pick. So accountable is just a verb. It's action all the time, right? When you have to give an account, you're on the side of judgment. Yep. And all of a sudden now we're dealing with trust. Like, man, I don't know if I could trust him in this situation. That's tough, because you're going to be in this situation again, because the game keeps going and you play 9 innings every day. And those situations will continue to repeat themselves. And if they can't trust you, the coaching staff can't trust you, or if the manager can't trust your decision on the basis, now we have a problem.
Absolutely.
So I'd rather be accountable than rather give an account.
You know, the other area, you just mentioned 2 or 3 things, and it's pretty basic when it comes to a lot of coaches, but important. That is, when you're, a runner gets to a base, say first base, it's not a standard talk about what you're going to tell them, because that determines a lot what the situation is. So basically, I guess what I'm getting at is, what do you tell the runner when he gets to first? What are some things that you always tell them, but then maybe some other things might adjust?
Excuse me. Always, before I leave them, it's the number of outs. Hey, nothing's on here. Watch for the ball in the dirt. We got 1 out. Yeah. So I'm like coming around and we got 1 out. And what I also did was I gave the count. And the coolest thing was, we were in Cincinnati, and Mike Moustakas was, he had played third base, he had played second base, and now it's the last game of the series, he's playing first. And as I started going along, I did it for me to stay engaged, but also for our base runners. So I would say, hey, we got a 1-1 count, 1 out. So that was the last thing that I left him with. He was like, you do this every pitch? Yes. Only with the runner on first. Hey, we got 1-2, 1 out. And so like players started nodding. It was something we got used to. Now there's things that change where like you might see the outfield shade with 2 outs. Hey, the right fielder moved towards the line. So anything down the line, you got to make sure you're sure, double check that. Hey, the left fielder is in. So ball that's hitting the gap, he's really got to hustle. So you're going to really get out there on that ball. We got 1-1, 2 outs here. Okay. So it's always the number of outs. For me, it was the count, and the number of outs at the end was the things that I gave. Also, if a pitcher was really quick, hey, quick feet, strong throw. We got 0-1, 2 outs.
I love that. I love the count, because the count has a lot to do with the situations that occur. And the other part is that today's players, especially the major league level, some guys can play more than one position. You just mentioned it. So defensively, guys could change on you, and you got to know that. There's so much to understand coaching first base, and that's why I wanted to bring up this particular talk. I think it's very important. Have you ever had a player tell you, look, hey, Tarek, I know the outs, you don't have to tell me. Have you ever had a player tell you that? I'm just curious.
After a while, they just go, okay with it.
Yeah.
And then there was times where like there's numbers going around, and, guys come up and they come back. And I remember one time, as I said, it's 0-0 or 0-1, 1 out. No, T, we got 2. Okay. I'm just making sure you're paying attention. We have a quick laugh about it, but it's just a safety blanket. And, they might go like, yeah. But here's the one thing. Guys grew up throughout the minor leagues, come up throughout the minor leagues playing with guys, and, you see them and you congratulating guys for making it to the major leagues and stuff. And there's conversations that go on, and, they might not always be there, because they could be catching up. And so my job is to make sure, for the sake of our team, for me being accountable to our manager, Derek Shelton, and our bench coach, Don Kelly, is I'm going to let you know that the count in the outs, even if you don't like it, so what? I'm just that Allstate commercial. I'm there for insurance.
Yeah, and that makes sense, because the minute we don't stay consistent with what we do, that's when the ball finds us. That's when the guy forgets the outs. And I love what you said about, it's good for young kids, because I always tell coaches that are working with young kids, and this is something, again, outside the box. I'm not talking about major league players. I'm talking about guys working with really young kids. I said, don't tell them the outs, ask them the outs. That way they think about the game more, because it's a learning process. But I do love the part about also once in a while thrown into the wrong out to see what they say, because now you see if they're paying attention. So I love what you brought up. Listen, finally, this has been awesome, and I appreciate your time. You and I talked off camera here and off the podcast about the virus, and I think you and I are very similar. We're always looking for the positive things about when things get tough. Because I'm not the most, I'm gonna admit it, I'm not the most positive person in the world, but I do try to look for the positive things when things are going rough. And we talked about some of the positive things that in baseball at the youth levels, especially, um, some of the positive things that have happened in the game, some of the things you've done. Talk about those areas so it can help our coaches that are maybe struggling with, oh, we're not playing games, or we're not doing this, we're not doing that.
Well, yes, I mean, there's been a huge, challenge, for our world and our nation, and our kids, missed seasons last year, whether it was track, football, track, baseball, all spring sports, where guys didn't get to do anything. And coming into when school started, it's been up in the air here in California. So I was fortunate to be, a co-founder and a board member of BRG, Baseball Resource Group. And we had a scout ball league where we played for 6 weeks at Lake Elsinore Storm Stadium, down in Lake Elsinore, California. And for 6 weeks, kids got to come out and play games. And games started from 7 a.m. and the last game was played at 4:30. And they were able to play games and play against good competition and get seen by scouts. But the coolest thing is that kids didn't have to leave California to go play baseball. They were able to play it right here in their backyard. We socially distanced, we tested as far as, fevers and stuff like that, temperatures for guys to come in and play. And it was a great opportunity for for young players to get out in the field. And the feedback from the parents was great, that their kids were seen by scouts. They were out, able to compete. And now our next phase is, how can we continue that on? And so we're working on an instructional league here where guys can continue to work on their skills, because there's, kids that went from junior high to high school that didn't get an opportunity to continue to work on their skills because some high schools aren't practicing. And we were able to create that opportunity and are still creating opportunities, for our young men and then, our young ladies in softball later on, to be able to get out and continue to do anything. And then also, just being able to help our young kids see authority different in the communities, and try to bridge a gap between, law enforcement and our youth. Having law enforcement see our youth for, who they are. And remember that one time we were young and, considered rebellious, and were looked at. Like, I grew up in the 80s and 90s where rap music, my parents were looking at me like I was crazy with this music and wearing white t-shirts and baggy clothes, and we were looked at wrong. And now my generation is doing the same thing. And it's just funny how things go. But at some point, someone's got to say, hold up, like, these are young kids. They're trying to find their ways. Some kids are hurting because of the households that they're growing up in. Police officers see horrific stuff and then have to, go from one call to another, and just trying to create, avenues and means for those guys to get the help that they need for seeing just horrific things all day long in their shift, and going home and coming back and doing it again. But also for our youth that have had, intense interactions with law enforcement or with authority, and just trying to help bridge that gap and just getting back to how we used to be, just respectful and loving and considerate of others. And so that's my greatest commission, is, to lead the way for my boys, and just understand this, that we're all flawed. We're all trying to find our way in life. And the coolest thing is that no matter how you start off, you have an opportunity to change. And life is just about redemption. And we're all trying to recover from certain things. And so I look at recovery and healing as it's just a new beginning, a new way to heal, a new way to love, a new way to have a perspective in life. And it's a journey. And so that's what life is about. And I'm able to impart those things while being a baseball coach.
Yeah, you know what? Well said. I love it. I'm so happy that we got a chance to talk about this. The other part is this type of program can be modeled all over the country, and it should be modeled all over the country. And see, there's a great positive right there. And one of the things that we don't do enough in society and in baseball also, and that is communicate more, discuss, have a discussion. Don't just jump on somebody because they said something. Ask them why
Mm,
they said it, debate it, talk about it, communicate. I mean, I think that's how we all get better. And I think there's not enough about that, but I do see that in coaches in the game of baseball where there's more talking nowadays than, like I said, when I grew up, the guys just, they told you what to do and you did it, and that was it. There was no asking why. Nowadays we let players and everybody should be able to be asked why. What about, and I'd love to ask you this part, when it comes to the game of youth sports,
mhm.
maybe finish it with this advice for our coaches and parents that are working, or our organizers, the presidents of leagues, on
Mhm.
what players should be doing more nowadays to develop as a better player and a better person.
Right. And this is the one thing that everyone makes fun of, and is practice. You know, you get better in practice and learn how to compete in the game. So you get to take everything that you worked on, you failed, you worked through your emotions of failing and overcame in practice, and you get to apply that in the games. And what I've seen and watch a lot of youth sports and having two boys, and watching them go about was that coaches stress perfect, practice makes perfect. And so when we go perfect, we go flawless, don't make mistakes, get everything right. I got this, I'll never be wrong. And guys would make an error in a game and would lose it and wouldn't be able to recover. And so we weren't doing our kids a service in that. We're helping them work through that failure, because in life they're going to fail. And it's like, so they can fail and go backwards, or we can fail forward where you can get up. I've been through this before. I messed up, and I'll get it. Like, what do I need to do? What do I like? So you got to keep working at it. And it's just like, Pat Listash, a friend of mine, he's just like, he would tell a story of, Ryan Sandberg took 200 ground balls a day. And so if you're a minor league player, how many ground balls do you think you should take a day? And he was like, 200. He was like, no, you should take 300. Like, he got to a certain point. But that equates to time. But one thing that we have now is technology goes like, you know, I can't take 200 ground balls because I still got to play a game tonight. So how can I up my intensity level so it's like I'm taking 200 ground balls, but I do it in 50?
Hmm.
And so it's just practice, and in development. And here's the one thing: if your kid, like, you're sending your kids out to do these things, there's two things that is going to happen. You know, they get exposure, which is great, and people get to see them, or they get exposed. And as a parent, we always want to put our kids in the best position. So if your kid is not having the training in the fails and the failure and overcoming, and you put them out in front of the people and they get exposed, that might be the only time your kid will get seen. And anytime your kid steps out on the field, they're opening themselves up for judgment. Like, I don't like how you did that. I don't like how you turn. I don't like how you swing the bat. And we got to help our kids understand that they're not always going to be liked. And so it's like, oh, he's a hater. No, certain guys' job is determined on how they evaluate you.
Mm-hmm.
And you might not be a fit for that organization at that moment in time, but it doesn't mean 2 years from now you might be a fit. And so we have to help our kids with the mindset of, it's not about hating, it's just, when you play sports, you open yourself up for judgment. When you go to school, that's all a test is. A test is judgment. What did you practice on while you were at home? Because we get to see how you compete on this test. And that's it. And if we can get that mindset, then it will make it to where sports and life, they run just like this.
And
And
you were reading my lips right there, right? It prepares them for real life because we're judged every day in life. whether you like it or not, whether you're going for a job or whatever the situation may be. Hey, Tarek, I'm going to get an email on this. I know from some people, so I got to ask you. I know I said that
Excuse me.
last question, but I think it'd be interesting because one, the virus or the pandemic has done two things, I think, and you mentioned them. One,
Yes.
it's gone where people now are getting individual training because you can go
Yes.
one-on-one. That's important.
Yes.
Two, less travel because there's so much travel, so much money being
Mm-hmm.
spent on travel. Where
Yes.
with your program, you don't need that. You're right there. You're playing the games there, competitive. You got
Mm-hmm.
scouts. There's a lot going on. But my question's this one. You got two boys. A lot of
Yes.
dads are coaching. You coach your own boys. Last minute advice for coaches that coach their own kids, because that's not easy. No matter how, and you're a major league coach. So, you think that they would look up to you, but I always hear, well, but they don't listen to me all the time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry about that.
That's all right. That's all right.
I look at it like this. I try to coach everyone's kids like I'm coaching my kids. I want to give them what I want other coaches to give my kids. And here's the coolest thing. I trust that at TCU, Daryl Anderson is giving my son, TJ, the same as I'm giving everyone else's kids that I'm coaching, that I give Cole Tucker and Josh Bell. Like, I want their parents to know that I'm giving them the same thing. And so that's the trust that I have. My wife coached my son in high school. And, he got it just like everyone else got it. And I know we want the best for our kids, but there's huge responsibility when you stand before kids, when you stand before men, that it's about the group and you help the individuals, but it's still about the group and moving forward. And sometimes it's a way for us as dads to stay connected and do things with our kids, which is great. But when there's other kids involved, there's a huge responsibility there as well. And I salute the dads that do it. And we've all seen guys that have struggled to manage that dad hat and role with their kids, and some do it well, and some are still finding challenges in that. But just trying to be patient and understanding that for us, sports showed us about our kids the things that we didn't see during the day while they're at school. And so if our kids wasn't focused at practice, and we understood that they weren't focused at school, and we need to address that issue. And especially, being a dad that travel a lot and being away, that responsibility fell upon my wife. And I tried to do everything I could when I came home to step in, but she saw it. And sports and life parallel, and so that's the biggest thing. And hats off to those that are able to do it very well.
Absolutely. We always talk about it. Hats off, especially to our volunteer coaches and for all the women out there, all the moms. We've said this 1,000 times, get involved in coaching, because I believe, I know we've talked about it on the show, that women make great coaches. And I've seen it, and we just need more women in the game, I believe. And that's another topic for itself, Tarek. But listen, man, this has been awesome. Can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
Man, thank you so much for having me. And it's just great to just, talk about life and sports. And, this is what we need. We just need to have, conversations, challenge certain, belief systems within ourselves, and not just go with, okay, this is what was taught to me, and be able to challenge it by having other conversations, and allowing everyone the freedom to change their minds and be who they are. And that's the cool thing about life. We all want to be accepted, for who we are, but at the same time, we have to be accepting of others as well.
Yeah, matter of fact, that'll follow through with social media. Folks, if you're on social media, if somebody puts out a post, in baseball, something that maybe you disagree with, don't tell them that it's bad. Ask them why they do it. Have a discussion with them about it, right? Because you may think it's good for you, it's not good, but all of a sudden when they give you their opinion why they do it as a coach, it might perk up your ears and say, wow, I never thought about that. Folks, 37 years in a game, 38. Today, I can't believe how much I learned already. And every show's the same. I mean, there's always something, Tarek, that I'm always learning constantly, every show I do. And that's what's great about the game. You never stop learning.
Absolutely. And just talking and hearing your questions, helped me out, where there's things where I'm going to go back and just write down, like, because sometimes certain questions provoke thoughts,
Yep.
and where it's like inspiration comes from within. It was like, wow, like that came from me. Let me write that down. I don't want to forget it.
Forget it.
And so that's it. And that's the biggest thing is like, we want to be accountable, and we use that word, accountable and responsible. But then there's also another side of the coin, and it's giving an account. And when you have to give an account for something, it's painful. And in that moment, you get to grow and see what's the opportunity moving forward. How do I fix this? How do I prevent this as much as I possibly can from moving forward? And as a guy that has given many accounts in my life, it's making me become more accountable and better and responsible. And that's the cool thing about life, is that we always get another chance and another chance every day. We open up our eyes in every conversation that we have.
All right, folks, that's Tarrik Brock with the Pittsburgh Pirates, first base coach, major league player, outstanding individual. You can tell just by talking to him. We've taken him way over his time. He's so generous. So remember, Tarrik Brock, outside the box. Special thank you to our producer, Brian Kroc with the Lineup Media Group. And also, don't forget, check us out on Twitter at Baseball Out. Check us out on YouTube, Peter Caliendo, and the podcast, baseballoutsidethebox.com. Listen, folks, everybody stay safe, be healthy. Don't forget, exercise, drink your water, get your sleep, take your vitamins, all that. Obviously, we also want you to wear your mask, social distance when you can, and just be friendly. That's the main thing. Friendly to everybody. Treat everybody how you want to be treated. God bless you all. We'll see you on the next show.